South Africa's own government has officially warned of a potential coup d'etat. For decades, the country was seen as a stable giant of Africa, the democratic powerhouse. But behind the scenes, its once feared military has been left to rot, and now its top generals are starting to speak out, openly defying their political masters. The soldiers are angry, the youths are jobless, and the people are losing faith in a system that promised them everything but delivered nothing. The whispers of a coup are getting louder, and the conditions on the ground looks eerily similar to those in other African nations right before their armies decided to take control. In this episode, we're going to dive deep into the shocking decay of South Africa's armed forces, how its top generals began a campaign of open rebellion, and why the Rainbow Nation might be on the verge of following the revolutionary path of its brothers in the Sahel. Let's break it down. It starts as a joke on the streets of Joburg and on social media feeds across the nation. A dark humor has taken hold. Memes are now circulating with captions like, "We have to pick our favorite coupists now." But this isn't just comedy. It's a symptom of a deep political sickness. When the idea of a military takeover becomes a punchline, it means the unthinkable has become thinkable. The sacred line between democracy and military rule has been blurred. This is the first stage of a coup of fate, where the people become so disillusioned with politicians that they start to psychologically accept an alternative, no matter how drastic. This digital discontent is a powerful force. We saw it in the Sahel how social media became a tool for the people to rally behind revolutionary figures like Captain Ibrahim Traoré, bypassing the state-controlled media that propped up failed pro-Western leaders. In South Africa, this online frustration is creating the perfect environment for a radical shift. The political elite may not be listening, but on the digital front line, the people are making their feelings clear. The current system is broken, and they are desperate for a way out. To understand why South Africa is on a knife's edge, you have to look at its army. This was once the most powerful military on the continent, a force to be reckoned with. Today, it's a shadow of its former self, deliberately starved of cash by the very government it is sworn to protect. The national defense budget has been slashed to a dangerously low 0.8% of GDP. To put that into perspective, over 60% of that tiny budget is spent on salaries, leaving almost nothing for equipment, training, or maintenance. The result? A military that has been publicly described by its own leaders as being in a critical state of decline. The army is forced to use vehicles from the 1970s. The Air Force is a tragic joke. Only a handful of its vital unreached transport helicopters can actually fly, and its advanced Revolt attack helicopters are grounded. This isn't just neglect. It's a strategic blunder that has left the nation vulnerable and its soldiers feeling abandoned and humiliated. It's this exact feeling of being betrayed by a corrupt political class that has pushed soldiers in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger to say enough is enough and took matters into their own hands. Nothing exposes the decay of South Africa's military more than its recent disastrous mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In early 2025, soldiers were sent into one of Africa's deadliest war zones to fight the heavily armed M23 rebels. It was a suicide mission. South African troops were sent, in the words of their own parliamentarians, with knives to a gunfight. They had no air support, no drones, and an ancient equipment. The human cost was staggering. 14 soldiers were killed and 174 injured. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and ultimately defeated, forced into a humiliating withdrawal where they were reportedly escorted to safety by Rwandan forces. Back home, politicians called it a delusional whitewash and a national tragedy. For the soldiers on the ground and their commanders, it was the ultimate betrayal. They watched as their brothers died for a mission that was doomed from the start by political incompetence. This kind of failure does more than just hurt morale. It plants a dangerous seed in the minds of soldiers. If the politicians are willing to send us to die for nothing, then they are no longer fit to lead. For years, the South African military suffered in silence, but now the silence is broken. In an unprecedented move, top generals are going public, openly attacking the government. The Surgeon General stood up and blamed you, the politicians, for creating a Mickey Mouse force. A Navy admiral accused the Treasury of compromising national security. But the most explosive act of defiance came from the head of the entire military, General Ruzizani Mufwanya. In August 2025, He flew to Iran on an official visit that his own president knew nothing about. There, he declared that South Africa and Iran share common goals and condemned the United States, a shocking move that was a flagrant breach of protocol. The government in Pretoria panicked, publicly disowning their own top general's words. But the message was sent. The military leadership is now acting on its own, seeking new, powerful allies like Iran and, by extension, BRICS partners like Russia and China. This wasn't just a trip, it was a political statement. The general was signaling that if the government won't defend the nation's interest, the military will find partners who will. A frustrated military is a dangerous thing, but a frustrated military in a country that is a social tinderbox is a potential explosion. The reality for millions of South Africans is a nightmare of poverty and hopelessness. Youth unemployment is a catastrophic 62%. That means nearly 2 out of every 3 young people have no job and no future. This isn't just a statistics, it's a lost generation. We saw what this despair can do in July of 2021, when the country erupted in riots that left over 350 people dead and cost billions in damages. The experts all agree the riots were fueled by the same poverty and inequality that have only gotten worse today. The government has failed to fix the economy. It can't keep the lights on and it can't provide basic services. This is the exact environment that created the revolutions we saw in the Sahel. When a democratic government fails to provide for its people, it loses its legitimacy. And when people feel they have nothing left to lose, they will look for a savior, even if that savior wears a uniform. What's happening in South Africa is not happening in a vacuum. Across the continent, a revolutionary spirit is rising fast. In Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, we've seen young patriotic military leaders rise up, kick out neo-colonial French forces, and reject the Western puppet who kept their nations poor. Leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traoré are not coup makers. They are liberators, cheered on by their people for finally standing up for true African sovereignty. They have turned to new allies like Russia and China, who offer partnerships based on mutual respect, not colonial exploitation. Now, ask yourself, are the soldiers in South Africa not watching this? Do they not see their brothers in the Sahel taking back their destiny? When they see their own government failing, their own people suffering, and their own military being humiliated, they are undoubtedly looking at the AES nations and seeing a viable alternative. The fear in the West is that South Africa, the economic anchor of the continent, will join this revolutionary wave, pivot fully to BRICS, and upend the entire geopolitical balance of power in Africa. The Western media is looking for tanks on the streets of Pretoria, but they are looking for the wrong thing. The real coup in South Africa is not a coup of force, but a coup of faith. It's the slow, painful death of the people's belief in the democratic system. This coup isn't being led by one general. It's being driven by millions of empty stomachs, by a generation with no jobs, and by soldiers who feel betrayed. The politicians have broken the contract they made with the people in 1994. While South Africa still has strong courts and a free press, these institutions are being strained to the breaking point. The decay is deep and the danger is real. The final question is not if a fundamental change is coming, but what the change will look like. Will the political class wake up and finally serve the people, or will the day come when the people's cries of despair become so loud that the soldiers decide they have no choice but to answer the call? This is Frontline Africa. If you value truth unfiltered and power reframed from an African perspective, subscribe, like, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I am Ezekiel Energeta. See you in the next one.